The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we'll recap Austin's first loss of the season in Portland. We'll preview the upcoming Seattle Sounders match and cover a big weekend for Austin FC fans, including attending the academy matches against FC Dallas and eMLS Cup. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. And yeah, Landon, we don't, on weeks when the team plays on the road, we often don't see each other, but I feel like we got plenty of time together this weekend, both on Saturday and Sunday. So let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah, it was a very busy away weekend. So on Saturday, they kind of had the run back of the U17 match that was supposed to happen against FC Dallas a while back, and they were going to have a bunch of fans out. Got canceled because of the snowstorm or the ice storm and got moved to this date. I think there's probably fewer people than RSVP'd to the original one, but still had quite a good turnout, right?
Yeah, the stands were full. There was a great march. I like that you got up and shot the video of it, which last time I looked on Twitter, it done like a ton of interaction as far as the fans marching in.
Yeah, that one got a lot of interaction, but I think our most popular social media post ever is going to be the video of Mike and Steph talking to the dog.
Oh, really?
Yes, that is on Instagram specifically. That is going to be our most viewed social media item ever, probably.
Hey, you got to know what the people want, which I guess, so that's, Friday there was a Swoon Tower day. Saturday we had a tailgate, meet up at the pitch, an Academy U17 match. Well, I guess they had several Academy matches, I think, right? Like,
that's true.
Like three teams play, but it was kind of the big performance there at Palmer Field was the U17 match, and you provided some updates from it, but they look good from what I saw. I mean, FC Dallas is obviously a really strong academy, but the boys really put in a good shift and really definitely seem to appreciate the support. I mean, how cool would that be if you were a 17-year-old kid to have like full stands and a band and songs and chants and sort of all that behind you as you're just like playing soccer?
Absolutely, yeah, and you could see it on their face. Like they scored the U17s was the game that everyone kind of gathered around, but when they scored that first goal and the Murga starts doing all right chant, you could see on their faces that like I was sitting next to Mike Ellison at the game actually, and he was like, "Where do you think this like ranks on like moments in these kids' lives?" And I was like, maybe number one. Like, this might be the best moment of these kids' lives, like beating FC Dallas and having all these fans go crazy for you. Like, I imagine it's up there for them. But yeah, it's got to be really cool for these kids.
Yeah, and they looked really good on set pieces, which is something maybe the senior team didn't quite follow through on against Portland the next day. So maybe there's something to be learned from the academy kids.
So I think the worst result of the day was a 0-0 draw for one of the younger teams. The U15s won 4-0. The U17s won 2-1. And looked, so I didn't see much. I didn't see much of the other or of the U15s, and then none of the others. So watched all of the U17s, and they looked like the better team for most of the game, right? Like until about 60-something minute when Dallas scored their goal. Austin FC was in control of that game, and Dallas pulled one back like halfway through the second half, and then put a lot of pressure on Austin through the rest of the game. And I think Austin ended up getting a red card in the last couple of minutes, and were kind of holding on for dear life, but never gave up the equalizer and ended up pulling out the win. So I think it's worth noting that Micah Burton was not at this game. He is in Argentina with the U17 national team, and so who might be the best player on the team wasn't there. But that being said, there's still a lot of really good players on this team.
Yeah.
There's the goals came from Brian Arellano and Diego, I think it's Diego Rodriguez. That might not be their correct last name, but and then number 2, who I believe his name is Anthony De Anda, and he came from the Barca Residency Academy in Arizona. That kid can play, man. he was the little left winger, and I had seen him play several times, and mostly at either fullback or like wing back, and could tell he had a little bit of sauce, but he wasn't playing in an attacking position like that. But that kid's good.
Well, then that was Saturday, and then we got to see something that I hadn't was nothing like anything I had experienced on Sunday. Was the eMLS Cup. What did you think about going to ACL and watching a bunch of guys play video games?
Well, the way you said it was about where my expectations were set. Like, I'm not that much into gaming. Didn't really know that much about like esports or anything like that. But they offered us media passes and sent us some cool jerseys. And I was like, yeah, I'll go check it out. It should be a fun event. And we got there and it was like actually pretty cool, right?
It really was. It was really cool. I mean, the production value, I guess I didn't appreciate like how many different things were going on. So there was the main stage at ACL, they had sort of 4 places set up to play, but they had, they had like an announcer's desk that you would have, just like you have like the Austin FC pregame show, and they had a DJ, and they had Mike LaHood, who is just an amazing MC, and Lamurgan. Like, it was a really, really cool experience, and something I went in not knowing anything about or what to expect at all.
Yeah, so they had the Murga there, kind of playing in between little set breaks and things like that. So they're kind of like the house band, and they had a DJ. Mike LaHood was emceeing. Me and Jeremiah were up in like the press area for a bit, and then your son, our gaming consultant, who also got a media pass.
He got a media pass, and then he immediately told the guys, like, I don't play sports games. Like, shut up, like, I just like to shoot people. I'm like, stop it. Just own the moment and be here. But he had a really good time, and he loves Cheez-Its and Pringles, and those were the official snack sponsors of the event. So he did chow down on some Cheez-Its for sure.
Like, we just turned around and Jackson just had Cheez-Its. Like, where'd you get those? Like, some guy walked by and gave them to me. Cool. And there's another moment when we were standing up in the media area where we turned around and there was like a banner hanging up on the wall. And you were like, this guy seems like too handsome to be like an eMLS player. Is he actually Nashville's guy? And it was like kind of a weird picture. And after looking around, it was like, I think that's Walker Zimmerman, actually.
Yeah, for sure. Not that, and apologies to the Nashville eMLS guy who was there, but yes, it was definitely Walker Zimmerman. But yeah, man, it was a great experience, and they put on a good show, and I learned a lot, and when our guy, Ex Verde, who I guess he was just in the knockout round, and he played against the Red Bulls guy, is that right?
Yeah, the Red Bulls player, yeah.
And so the Red Bull guys took a 1-0 lead, and then like when he scored the goal to tie it up, I think in the second half, like the whole floor erupted. It was almost like being at an Austin FC match. It was kind of wild. Yeah,
so I know I told you left pretty early on, and I told you that I was about to leave as well, but I actually ended up staying the whole time pretty much and left after the final match. But like the room was like pretty electric during that final, and like people were really into it. And I kind of figured it was going to be an event where people like cycled in and out the whole day and just like, oh, this is something weird. I'll come check it out for 5 minutes and then leave. But they were at capacity from like 2 p.m. when the event started. And I left after that final match, and there were still people outside in line. So it was 1 in, 1 out all day. And so like, and a lot of the people stayed for a lot of it. So I think they said there was like 36,000 people viewing on Twitch during the final, which I know there's other esports that pull way bigger numbers than that, but I thought it was a really well executed event, and I would probably go to something like that again, which is not something I thought I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants to invite us back to that in the future, we would be more than happy to do it. So who ended up winning in the final? Who was in the final and who ended up winning it all?
It was Atlanta versus DC, and Atlanta won it, I believe. And I was kind of pulling for DC because Pablo Maurer of The Athletic, who is their beat writer for DC and does some other like freelance work in like DC soccer media, was there covering eMLS Cup for The Athletic. And so I snuck over into like the little side stage area where they were letting the Morga hang out in between sets. And that's where Pablo was. So I got to meet Pablo Maurer and just kind of hang out and talk to him for a while. And he was writing about the DC guy, or like kind of pulling for the DC guy because he's from DC. And so I think we were all kind of pulling for the DC guy just because Pablo was standing there. But I think the Atlanta guy ended up winning.
Well, and random Pablo note, there's this like crazy dive bar close to my house that apparently Pablo spent Saturday night at called Shenanigans over on Pond Springs Road. Like out of the hundreds of bars in this city, how Pablo Maurer ended up at this like random strip mall, like I mean, it's like a classic 80s dive bar thing is beyond me, but it was kind of cool to see. And apparently there's a lot of people from Austin on Twitter who also spent a lot of time making a lot of bad decisions there, because I saw a lot of response to that too.
I think he like hunts things like that. He's also a photographer, like a really good photographer, and has like done like projects where he'll sneak into abandoned hotel complexes in the Catskills and like do these beautiful photo projects. And so I think he just kind of hunts out weird things like shenanigans whenever he's in a city.
Well, that was cool to see. And I guess the other thing, I think like we saw this from Ex Verde today, where he like really I think appreciated the support that he got in the match, and seemed a little disappointed that he didn't make it out of the first round, right? Did you see that? I think it was a tweet? Yeah,
he tweeted that he was like made some mistakes and like was kind of like, I let the fans down and I'm sorry about that. But all the Austin FC fans and like the Los Verdes folks and the Morga folks who were there in the crowd gave him a lot of love after he lost, and he like didn't know what to do. He's like, no, I just lost. Like I don't deserve this right now. But yeah, you could tell that he like appreciated it, and he came back out and was helping Michael Hood do some like merch giveaways afterwards. But yeah, I think he was not expecting to have fans there and was like really appreciated it.
Yeah, I guess to tie that back to the Academy game, we asked about where it's at. Mike Ellison asked you about like what does the ever 17-year-old kid think? Like I'm sure that's the biggest crowd Ex Verde has ever had cheer him on playing a game, right?
Cheering for him specifically, probably yes.
Yeah, which is awesome for him too. But yeah, overall it was really good experience. And then one thing that I did love is on the way out, I caught Ray Costello giving the middle finger to the Houston Dynamo jersey and like taking a picture of himself, which was just a random encounter. But that was like, this is the most Ray thing ever. That I would be on the way out with my son, and because they had all those jerseys lined up along the walk in and out.
Speaking of Ray Costello, I was going to tell this story and forgot, but
okay.
There was like the producer who was like running, like the stage producer, kind of like telling everybody when to go and where, and when the camera was going to turn on, and when the Morga should be playing and when they shouldn't be playing. And he walks over and is holding the trophy as the finals starting. And Ray walks up to him and just like starts touching the trophy. And he's like, no, you can't touch it. And we realized that like the guy's holding it with like white cotton gloves. And then Ray just puts his fingerprints all over it.
It's a perfect Ray moment.
He acted pretty proud of it. All right. Anything else about eMLS or the Academy before we take a break, Jeremiah?
Only that it's incredible that in a weekend when the team is out of town, that there's like that much action going on and like that much Austin FC experience and like fan stuff. And it shows how much this city has like embraced this club and how much is going on. And hopefully eMLS can come back to South by Southwest again sometime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine with as good of a turnout was there, and it wasn't just a bunch of random South by people. There's a lot of Austin FC gear in the crowd. And so I like eMLS sees that, MLS sees that, other soccer related stuff sees that, and they're probably going to want to come do more events in Austin, which I think we'll welcome. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back to recap the Portland game over the weekend. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
Austin's newest spot to enjoy food, fun, and football is now open. The Pitch, located next to Austin FC's training facility at 13,000 Harris Ridge Boulevard, has a little something for every fan.
You can order from 4 different kitchens with unique cuisines serving locally sourced food, as well as a selection of local beer and craft cocktails. Or just settle down in front of one of the 35 big screen TVs to watch Austin FC when they're on the road.
So we talked about going there on Saturday, and they were out of the greatest quesadilla that Jackson Bentley has ever eaten in his life. So we had the chicken strips and we had the burger, and we can report that those are also tasty. So check
Mike
it out no matter
Ellison
what.
gave me some of his fries that he got from Ranger Burger, and they were also very good.
Okay, so it's not just the quesadilla. There are, I think, at least 4 places to eat, and they're all pretty good. The pitch is open from 11 to 8, Tuesday to Saturday. They're also open for special events. So I know against Seattle, there's going to be a watch party. So be sure to visit thepitchaustin.com for more details and information.
You can get a 10% discount by entering the word GOAL, that's GOAL, in the promo code field in the mobile ordering app on your next visit.
All right, let's talk about hot sauce.
Let's do it.
Teardrop Pepper Company has finally created the perfect recipe right here in Austin, Texas. Their all-natural, award-winning hot sauce has a delicious blend of flavor and heat, enhancing your favorite foods and leaving you wanting more.
Whether you like the zesty kick of golden habanero or the garlicky smoothness of supreme serrano, it's the best way to spice up your Austin FC pre-match meals. Teardrop Pepper Company has 2 unique flavors, and you can order them from their website, teardroppepperco.com, or from their social media pages.
And I know every time I drop in a reference to using it in your Bloody Marys, like you laugh, but I'm not very specific. But I can say, here's what you need: 4 ounces.
Give us the recipe. Give us the recipe.
4 ounces of Tito's vodka, 8 ounces of your favorite Bloody Mary mix, whatever it might be, Zing Zang for me. Then jalapeno stuffed olives, fresh sliced jalapenos, and some Teardrop Pepper Company Golden Habanero sprayed under that top is like the perfect spicy Bloody Mary. So that's my advice for all those of you out there. Try that out, and it will change your life.
I really want one of those right now. If you would like some of your very own Teardrop Pepperco hot sauce, you can use offer code GOAL, that's GOAL, to save 10% off your order. Put it on everything, they'll make more. All right, we are back to recap the game over the weekend. So Austin FC lost 1-0 to the Timbers in Portland on Saturday night. Some important stats here. Austin led possession 61% to 39%. They lost the expected goals battle 1.82 to 0.92, so not too far apart from each other here. Shots, Austin actually led in shots 16 to 14. In all of those 30 shots, there was one shot on target from either team, and it was the one that went in.
It was the one goal, yeah. I know. And we can get into this, but a lot of these stats are reminiscent of performances that last year we talked about that were very dismaying. And I think the narrative on this one is going to be that this was a little bit different somehow. Like it was a different kind of 1-0 loss.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was. We'll get into that a little bit later. But looking at some other stats, so Austin blocked 9 of Portland's shots. Portland blocked 6 of Austin's. And so it was just seemed to be mostly like a pretty well played defensive game from both teams. And yeah, like I said, the one goal on target ended up being the one that mattered. But we talked about last week how this is going to be kind of our first big test of the year. First 2 teams we played were quite bad. Portland is a good team. We went there, ended up being a cold and rainy night in Portland. And it was a big test. That's how the game shook out.
You read this, can they do it on a cold, rainy night in here or there or whatever? Do you know the origin of that?
It's Stoke. Can they do it on a cold and rainy night in Stoke? And I think it was a broadcaster in England who said it once, and then it caught on, and people just say that about Stoke now.
Do you know who he said it about?
I do not.
Lionel Messi. He was saying Lionel Messi's pretty good, but could he do it on a cold, wet Wednesday night in Stoke? And I'm
going to guess he did.
He did. Yeah, and eventually, at some point, he actually did get to play years later in Stoke, and he did perform on a cold, rainy night in Stoke. But it's just hilarious that.
So it wasn't even about a specific game. They were just saying that Messi couldn't hack it in the Premier League. Was that kind of the idea? Interesting. I did not know that.
Yes.
So one of the big questions we had was the lineup. So we kind of thought we knew who most of it would be. I think the biggest question for me was who started at the 6. And I was vocal that I wanted to see Valencia in this one just because of what kind of game it was going to be. We saw Danny Pereira, and Danny Pereira looked pretty damn good again.
Yeah, he did. I mean, but yeah, we only saw the one change, correct? It was there were a couple other before we get into that. There were a couple other reasons why we might not we might have seen a change. Sebastian Drius, he just had a baby.
Correct.
Very recently. And then Maxi Arruti, I guess he was banged up a little at the end of the last match, and there were some questions about whether he would be able to make it or not, too, if I remember right.
Right, and then Alex Ring had a death of a family member, or like a friend of the family, and so weren't quite sure about his status either. So, yeah, there's a few guys in question there, and then I guess the center backs were the other ones. So we got Gabrielsen in place of Kip Keller, but after all those questions, the only two changes, actually the only one change, right, was Gabrielsen for Keller.
Yep, that was the only one.
And so, yeah, I feel like every time I doubt Danny Pereira, he steps up and proves me wrong a little bit there.
What do they keep calling him? I just watched the midweek press conferences finally today. Oh, Pepe. That's right.
And so Wolf calls him Pepe, which I think I've seen. I think another player called him that in a press conference.
Ethan Finley did this week. He did the midweek press conference, and he called him Pepe too.
So I wonder if that comes from having two Dannys on the team, maybe. But the other weird one is Wolf always calls Cecilio Cece in the press conferences, and I don't think anybody else calls him that. Maybe Ceci, and Wolf
has made Cece out of it.
Yeah. But yeah, let's kind of run through some of the bigger moments of the game here. So in the 32nd minute, Driussi put one into the back of the net, but was offside. So Ring plays a really big switch to Cecilio. He's one-on-one on the backside. Goes one-on-one with the guy, takes him on, cuts to the end line, and puts in a cross. And I think Nick Lima wins it on the backside, heads it in. On that header, Driussi goes up and is challenging Bill Tuiloma for the ball and falls down towards the goal and is almost on the goal line there and is standing up when Nick Lima kind of bashes it in across the face of goal again and stands up and puts it in, but it didn't have time to even think about getting back on side. So that one ends up not counting. Maxi Urruti has a chance. I think this was Alex Ring again putting in
it was the Alex Ring ball. Yep.
And he jumps up and it looks like maybe it skims his hair a little bit, but if he could have gotten a little touch on that one, that could have been something. And Cecilio is on the back post waiting for it, and the defender gets a leg up and kicks it out of bounds for a corner. But
yeah, I feel like that one was probably the best missed opportunity we had. I mean, it was just inches off. And I guess maybe we cursed ourselves last week, Landon, when you talked about how we used to talk about moments that might be goals, and now there's so many goals that we don't ever talk about that stuff, and now all we have to talk about are moments that might be goals. But that one was one that seemed like a real big missed opportunity.
Yeah, so I think that was maybe the individual moment that was most dangerous, but as far as broader windows of play, I think the one before, the Driussi goal that was offside, I think that was a really dangerous moment with Cecilio in the box crossing in, and we had a lot of numbers in there. And so there was a few different things that could have happened that could have ended up in a goal, but Portland just did a really good job of any time we got into a dangerous position, which we were doing a lot. We were getting into those dangerous positions, just closing it down and not giving us any space to make anything happen. And so I think there's probably a few moments that Austin should have executed a little bit better, that maybe a scuffed little pass, maybe played a little bit too slowly. And then other times it was just Portland shutting them down and just doing a really great job of, whenever we did get into those areas, not giving us any space to do anything. And that's where you see all those blocked shots coming from. At halftime, Cecilio and Diego actually switched sides. So Diego was not having a hard time kind of getting into the game and not really being super effective. So I think they switched them to see if they could affect that. And I'm not sure, what do you think would be different there? You think Diego would just maybe be a little bit more comfortable on that side, or is it getting him on the same side as Driussi? What's the logic there?
Well, that somebody, I don't remember who now, so somebody's not going to get credit for a question, but that came up in the post-game press conference, and Josh talked about Diego connecting with Driussi, and then he said giving Cecilio a chance to run at the young guy. So I don't know who the young guy was being specifically referenced. Yeah.
Rasmussen was the left back was Rasmussen, who was in for Claudio Bravo, who got a red card in the last game. So Rasmussen is, I guess, the young guy. And from what Mike LaHood was saying, was playing out of position. I'm not sure where he usually plays. He's listed as a defender. Maybe he normally plays on the right side. I'm not sure. But yeah, so do you think they're putting Cecilio on that side? And it wasn't necessarily a change for Diego, but to put Cecilio against that guy?
Right. I think so. That's what came up in the post game, is that they wanted to give Cecilia that run, and then also give Diego. That seemed to be a secondary factor. Was like giving Diego the chance to connect a little bit with Driussi.
Yeah, I mean, Driussi was not super influential in this game either, right? Like, I was watching to see why, and the only thing I can think of is, I mean, partially that he was on the side of the field that Diego Chara was on most of the game. That's going to affect it some. But Portland's lines were so tight. And the way that Austin's been playing is Danny at the 6 is dropped back on one level, kind of even with the fullbacks generally. And then Ring and Driussi at those dual 10s are pushed up, like kind of on the next line. And there was not space in between those lines to play. And so both of those guys ended up having to drop back deeper to get on the ball. Once they did that, they'd turn. But because they dropped in and the wingers were so wide that there wasn't anybody to play off of there. And so I think Driussi would get on the ball and would have to dribble somewhere else, or just like didn't really have anywhere to go with it. So I don't know. Like, I don't think he actually played bad. I think, again, Portland just kind of had a good game plan to kind of put us in tough positions and make us do things that we didn't want to do.
Yeah, that was my take on this game overall, is that it was, I think everybody looks at it from the perspective of their own team. But I mean, Portland like had a plan. They executed on it. You know, there were these, nobody had a ton of chances, but like these half chances came and they got lucky on one, or they didn't get lucky on one, but one happened, worked out for them, and one didn't for us. But like, it was hard to point to that being like a bad performance from Austin. It was really like good Portland.
Yeah. So, halftime comes in the 49th minute, I believe, is when the storm of yellow cards started pouring in.
Yeah.
I think there was like 5 or 6 yellow cards in like 10 or 12 minutes or something like that. There was Danny Pereira had gotten one already, and in the 62nd minute, he fouls one of the Charas. Maybe Jimmy Chara, over on the right side, just outside the box. And at that moment, like, it was like, I could have seen him getting a second yellow on that foul. And they like were zoomed in a little too far. And the look on Danny's face, I thought the ref was pulling out a second yellow, but they ended up giving nothing there. And in that moment, I was like, we need subs. Like, Danny can't stay in this game playing like this, and like in this kind of game, in that position with a yellow card. It can't happen. And that's when Portland scored the goal, was on that free kick. And so I've seen Gabrielsen catch some heat on Twitter and talking to people for the game in general. We'll talk about the goal and whether or not he deserves it for the goal, but the game in general, what was your assessment of Gabrielsen?
I mean, I thought he was pretty good. He seemed better on the ball than he had been early on. He seemed, decent in duels. Like, I didn't think he had a bad game. It was just like a game that turned on one event that it could have been anybody there. And I also liked him in the post game. He was super matter of fact. I don't know if you watched his interview or not, but like, he owned that. He's just like, yeah, it's soccer. Like, that was bad. Next time, we'll be on the good side of it. And he just kind of was ready to like take ownership of it and move on.
Yeah, I was talking to some folks at the eMLS thing about it, and I hadn't gotten a chance to watch the game for a second time. And on the first viewing, like, I thought Gabrielsen was really good. And looking on the second viewing, that's still my opinion. I think there were a few moments that he was not very sharp, and mainly there were 2 passes, one of which was just like maybe a little too risky for my liking. We ended up getting a foul out of it, and nothing bad happened. The other one was a giveaway where he just was trying to play between lines to Driussi and just misplayed the pass, and Portland broke, and it could have been a really dangerous situation. But I think actually think he ended up putting out that fire too. So there were several moments where he did put out fires in transition. Would even like run around the other side of Cascante as Cascante was pushing up, or one of them, Cascante made the error and Gabrielsen ran in behind and covered for him, last ditch tackles and things like that. There was also some people saying that they thought Kip should have played in this game. I don't know that Kip fixes any of the things that went wrong. And actually, I think there's a few moments where I saw Gabrielsen kind of slow play a guy where, like, I've not seen Kip slow play anything ever.
He's just 100 miles an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's like Gabrielsen's like faced up with a guy at the top of the box, and he kind of slow plays it and lets other people shift around and get in position. And then somebody else shuts down the next pass. And so I thought there was some really good moments there defensively that Gabrielsen did really well on, that like Kip has looked good, but I don't like Gabrielsen did make some errors, but I think Kip maybe makes a few other errors in this game just because of the way the game played and what Portland was doing against us. So back to the goal though. At first I thought, oh, he just tripped. It's unfortunate. Before he even goes down, he's beat anyway. So I think this is a goal, even if
no matter what. I think you're right.
Doesn't fall down. Tui Loma gets on the other side of him before any of that even happens, and so I think Tui Loma's getting to it and getting ahead on it either way. Bill Tui Loma led the Timbers in shots in this game. He had 4 shots, and he was also the one who hit the post in the first half. That was Bill Tui Loma. I was watching to see that one was. I don't know that it's any single defender's fault. It was kind of a scrambly moment, and there were 3 guys all in the same spot, and Gabrielsen is marking the other center back who is pushing ahead of Tui Loma, and Tui Loma just kind of drifts back. It's like maybe one of the midfielders should have tightened up when he realized how many numbers are in the box, but Bill Tui Loma, I think without the goal, was the man of the match. Just for some of like the defensive plays that he made, he was really, really good. And I didn't quite pick up how many plays he made in the first watch, but on the second watch, paying a little closer attention, he was excellent. And they have him to thank for a lot of those moments that could have been dangerous for Austin that he cut out.
I think one thing that I appreciated after that was that we saw such a tendency last year for us to give up a goal and then the team to be deflated, and for that one goal to lead to other like negative outcomes. And it was good to see them still like pushing hard and, and trying hard. And, there's a couple spots where there's referee calls that could have gone another way that maybe would have led to a different result. But that's where I felt like it was a different team. Like after they went down, they didn't just crater.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There are moments in the second half where they were just throwing the ball around the pitch and like switching balls across the field. Like Nick Lima a couple of times hit a ball, like switched the entire field, like all the way across the field, and landed it on Kolmanich's foot. And I'm like, we did not do this last year. And it's not like we brought in some new guys, right? But it was guys who were on the team last year who were doing this stuff. And I was like, who is this team that's playing like this? And so I think that's one of the reasons why I think this is different. Like they just looked like a really good team in a really difficult setting, a tough stadium to play in, a tough team to play against, playing pretty good soccer and just couldn't get it over the line.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the potential handball moment? What did you think about? What you think about when you saw it, maybe, and then upon? I don't know how many times you've watched it. I've watched it a bunch, and I've become less sure of my opinion every time I watch it.
Yeah, my opinion has changed quite a bit every time. In the moment, I thought it probably was a handball, but I did not. Unless they have other angles that we didn't see on TV, I didn't think there was evidence on the replay to overturn the call if it wasn't given initially. After watching it a million times afterwards, I think it probably wasn't a handball. I think it hit his shoulder maybe. But either way, even if it was, with the angles we saw on the broadcast, I don't think there's any way you can overturn that if it wasn't given initially, because it has to be clear and obvious to to overturn it, right? And I don't think we saw that in the replay footage.
Yeah, they talked about that a lot. And I would say in the moment, I was like yelling at the TV, convinced it was, and I've become less sure every single time that I watch it again than it was. So I mean, I guess it's the advantage of replay.
I think there's certain angles where it looks like it hits him like on the bicep or like close to his elbow, and then other angles where he like kind of swings that arm, but it looks like it hits his shoulder. And I thought both of those things on several different times when I watched it, but in the end, just kind of looking at angles, I think it probably did hit his shoulder, but I don't know.
That's the kind of stuff I'd prefer, I guess, given the choice. Like I'd prefer stuff like that to not decide a game. You know, if there was like a 50-50 thing, I'd prefer for it to not be a handball. Because it's happened to us, right? I think there was like one, I don't remember even what it was. Like Diego got one called on him last year that seemed fairly similar, that sort of changed the tenor of a game. But I'd rather like players decide that. Yeah,
I agree. So I don't think that one was a handball, but there was one like a minute earlier that I do think was a handball.
Oh, that was was it a Gite shot? Was it
Musa
that one?
Gite, it was like kind of a scrambly moment, and I think Ring plays one across and it lands on Gite's foot and he just smashes it. And I can't remember that center back's name, but whoever they subbed in at center back was in between the near post and Gite. And he turns, and at first glance, during the game even, I thought he had his arm close enough to his body and it hit his arm that I was like, no, they shouldn't give that. But upon viewing the replay, he's like got his little chicken wing out there. And as he turns, he extends that elbow out and it's off of his body. It's not touching his side there. His elbow is off his body and the ball hits him in the back of the arm there. And so if he had stayed sideways and it hit him, I think fair game, like don't worry about it. But he turns and sticks that elbow out and it hits him in the arm, and they didn't even look at that one. So I think that one would have been given a penalty had they reviewed it.
So that's just the standard is referee discretion. I mean, how does the decision come down about what they're looking at and what they're not looking at?
So, I mean, on it, like, I think the review booth is looking at everything, right? But say they're looking at that one and the dead ball ends and they play on. I don't think they can stop the game at that point and say like, oh, wait, go back and look at this thing 2 plays ago. So it very well could have been that. Like Austin was pushing already and was playing pretty quickly. And so it wasn't given initially. So they're just going to keep playing fast. And I think it was in a moment where we got like several corners in a row. And I imagine like maybe they did look at it and it was just too late.
Gotcha.
So the last 15 minutes of the game after that review, Austin was piling on pressure, throwing numbers forward, and then several times just like sprinting back for dear life to stop counterattacks and doing that over and over and over. And we're putting a lot of pressure, got a few dangerous chances, but just couldn't get that equalizer. And then it ended. The game ended 1-0.
Do you think, it started raining really hard in the second half? Did you see any effect of the weather on the play?
I mean, I didn't notice any specific moments, but like that weather is going to benefit Portland in that setting. Not just because they're the ones from the rainy place, but like if you're the one playing bunker and counterattack as opposed to the ones playing possession soccer, like the rain's going to help the counterattacking team. So yeah, I think it could have. I don't know that like I said, I didn't see any specific moments, but it didn't help us.
Yeah. Gotcha. Any individual players are there any starters? We talked about Driussi a little bit. We talked about Gabrielsen. Did anybody else stand out? I guess we could talk about Cecilio. I would like to a little bit. Yeah,
before we get to Cecilio, I wanted to point out John Kolmanich. I thought he was pretty solid defensively this game. I think last year, transition defense, when he was like 1v1 running back to goal, I thought he looked a little bit weak sometimes last year. And I thought he did a really good job against Moreno over on that side. And then Jimmy Chara would float over to that side sometimes. I thought Kolmanich was really solid.
Yeah, I think he's sort of, they talk about this international player, second year in the league, sort of getting his like legs under him and doing it. And he seems to be doing that for himself because he's been good so far.
Yeah. So Cecilio, I like had some really good moments throughout the game, was working his ass off. Like I didn't appreciate how much he ran in the first viewing, but upon the rewatch, I would not be surprised if he covered the most ground of any Austin player for how much he was tracking back and covering ground and sprinting after guys on defense. Which maybe led to the next talking point, is that he was calling for a sub in the 74th minute after Austin had just used their fourth sub.
Right. Yeah, he was calling for a sub at the point in time when no, he was calling for it like just about when GT came in, I think.
It was like literally like the broadcast shows Cecilio like waving at the sideline, and they cut over and you can see GT on the sideline waiting to come on.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. He worked really hard. I mean, they did a good job of shutting him down, but I just wanted to make sure like he gets credit.
Yeah.
People gave him a hard time last year when he didn't run a lot, and so like I want to make sure that he gets credit because he is running like you said, he's running his ass off up and down the field, right now.
So I think that's true that he's working really hard, but should we be critical of him for not being able to stay in a game longer than 74 minutes?
I think that's a really good question. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it.
I think you would want, like, it's one thing if he's 32 years old. And
yeah.
Like, okay, we're going to get 75 out of Cecilio and we bring on a sub, but he's still like 27. Like, he should be able to go a full game.
That's probably true, right? And it's like Driussi runs as much as anybody, and he plays the full 90 every single time. And
Diego as well. Like, Diego, like, I think the two early subs, so the first subs that came on were Gallagher for Kolmanich, Valencia for Pereira, and Finley for Fagundes. So the first two are yellow card subs. Kolmanich was on a yellow and had their fastest player, two of their fastest, most dangerous players counterattacking down his side every time. And so I think that was a smart play to take him off, put John Gallagher on, who, as we were throwing those numbers forward late in the game, Gallagher's speed saved us from a couple of other goals probably.
Yeah, he was the guy that was making the biggest runs back for sure.
Then, Danny, like I said before, like on a game like that, you like having your six be on a yellow card is super dangerous. And so I think that sub makes sense. Valencia looked pretty good. Diego, I think he got pulled out just because he wasn't being effective, and Finley scored 2 goals last game, so let's give him a run.
Yeah, I got that sense out of it too, that it wasn't unlike Cecilio. It wasn't like that he was tired or whatever, but they were looking for different ideas out of play and putting him in.
Yeah, so Musa Gite comes on for Maxi Ruti at 71. I thought Maxi did pretty well. They weren't giving him a lot of space to work in, but I thought he was as effective as he was going to be, maybe minus doing a little better on that header and maybe a couple of other little moments, but I didn't think he played bad at all. And then the last sub was Rodney Redes for Cecilio Dominguez. So I know you probably have feelings about this one, but I imagine you were disappointed to see Redes come on for Cecilio there.
Well, I was disappointed to see Redes in the 20. Period. So at the point in time, you couldn't put anybody else on. Like we mentioned this at the eMLS thing because Jared Straub was at the eMLS event taking pictures of people since he wasn't in Portland the night before. But yeah, like I would like to see Stroud get a shot to be the guy that would have been brought on there as opposed to Rodney Redes being that guy.
Yeah, in the moment, Redes was the only winger on the bench. I think maybe an alternative could have been to put in Hector Jimenez at left back and move John Gallagher forward to the wing. But we didn't know this at the time, but a few minutes later, John Gallagher would track back and save a couple of goals for us on counterattacks. So I think it was probably a smart move to keep Gallagher there. So yeah, in the moment, I think that's the only move you could make. But I think it's a fair question to ask, like, why is Rodney still in this 20-man roster? Which I don't think, and like in this specific game, I don't think Rodney was terrible, but we've just never seen him be good, right?
Be good. But the weird thing was, like, for me, like, everybody has this opinion, but then when Ethan Finley was talking about like how the team was deep and there's a lot of competition and like guys are really fighting for everything and they've got a lot of talent out there, like he specifically mentioned Rodney is like one of the people in the mix, which this was on Wednesday before the 20 got announced. I don't know if like Josh just has it in everybody's head that they need to talk Rodney up, or if there's like something that, because Finley was he had that comment when he's talking about how like what you do on Monday through Friday shows who's going to be on the field. So I don't know if like Rodney's just really, really good in practice, which is why he keeps being the guy in the 20, and it's not panning out in games and time. But I thought it was interesting that he got mentioned, and we're not there. We have no idea like what everybody looks like, what he's doing versus what Stroud's doing on Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I mean, like the pessimist, or like I guess the pessimist in me thinks that maybe they have a significant investment in Rodney Reddes. They paid money for him. And so like maybe they're just trying to get him some game time, and maybe he'll do something good so that his resale value will be something rather than nothing in the near future. But yeah, it could be true that he's a practice hero and just does really well. But I don't know. We haven't seen it in a game yet.
We haven't seen it in a game, yeah. I thought Gallagher...
I do want to defend... I heard some people talking trash about Rodney's corners. He ended up taking 4 of the 9 corners. I think maybe mostly because we were doing them quickly and he was just there. I don't think his corners were any worse than any of the other corners that were taken in the game.
No, I would agree with that. Of the things to criticize him about, like the corners were not one of the things that you should. The first couple were pretty good. The second couple were kind of iffy, but that seems pretty standard for what we were getting out of that match. But I was going to mention Gallagher looked really good. We mentioned him like making saves, but his speed came to play. So I think maybe one of the reasons you don't bring him in there as a winger is like they're just committed to this John Gallagher at fullback experiment, which is he's only a few games into, and he's pretty valuable in the role that he's playing.
He's been good, yeah, and I positionally, strength wise, I haven't seen him take advantage of strength wise either, and so I think he still could against bigger attackers. But he's been like the limited minutes he's seen. I think John Gallagher has looked like a fullback on either side, like left and right. We've seen him at both now, and I think he's looked really solid. So I'm kind of excited to see what kind of fullback he can turn into, because if he embraces it, he's still young enough that he could, like, if he's willing to like give up on a career as an attacker and just embrace being a fullback, I think he could be a really good one. So we'll see where he goes with that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then the other, Musajite, we had the one shot you talked about. I noticed that in the post game, Josh kind of got a little bit back onto he's floating around and not playing his role thing. And I don't know if that's what you observed, like when you watched it. But Wolf specifically referenced that sort of freelancing and not being where he's supposed to be in the system in the post game press conference. Yeah,
I think. I mean, in a game last night, like, it was pretty hectic by the time he came on, but in the minutes we've seen him play, he's playing the position very differently from what Maxi's doing. And if that's not on orders from Wolf, like, yeah, I don't think he's doing a great job. Because Maxi is doing, like, even though he's not getting a lot of shots off, he's not getting a lot of dangerous moments, he's making space for people by making the runs. Opening up the pocket in between those center backs and those midfielders so that our midfielders can kind of float in and exploit that space. So I think Maxi's been pretty effective at that kind of stuff, and I don't think Gite has. His hold-up play is really good whenever he does receive the ball, but as far as like moving and being in the right spots, it seems like he's kind of making it up, whereas Maxi is doing something very intentionally.
Well, I think before we wrap Portland up, do you want to take another break? And then we can sort of finish this out and preview Seattle?
Yeah, let's do it. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
All right. We are happy to let everybody know that we are doing another ticket giveaway thanks to Sage Wilson Property Group, which is really a continuation of the same ticket giveaway we've done before and we'll do up until right before the game on April 10th. So to enter, go to moontowersoccer.com, click on free ticket giveaway in the top navigation bar. or click the link in the show notes and fill out the form.
Again, this is made possible by Sage Wilson Property Group. So if you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, you should talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Property Group. And as always, Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community transparency and client education. And I saw the FVF team out doing a team building thing on Instagram, and they were fishing together, which kind of made me think, like, what is the best or worst team building thing you've ever had to do, like, for your job? Because fishing seemed a little bit like non-traditional as far as what office groups may go and do.
My last job was pretty cheap, and so we never got to do like actual cool stuff. And so it was like, we're gonna go to Peace Park and play on the splash pad and cook hot dogs. Like, literally, like, we took a bunch of adults to do that. And then another one was we went to Red Robin and got hamburgers, and then went to the trampoline park, which that one was actually pretty cool, but was still like a very cheap thing to do for like a team appreciation thing.
For sure. So definitely FEF, way better team appreciation things than that. I think it's the punchline of this ad.
Yes, so you can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law. All right, we are back, and we are about to preview the Seattle game here in a second. But first, we want to wrap up a few loose ends with the Portland game. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, what do we think about Wolf's game management here? Because I thought that the tactical plan was good, but there's a few little moments that I don't know that I have a super strong opinion on them, but I thought it would be interesting to just kind of explore. So one of them being kind of the timing of the subs. That first group came in the 66th minute. I think Chris Bills or somebody asked Wolf about it in the post-game press conference about when those subs were going to come in, and Wolf,
he was he was dismissive, right? I mean, he kind of
acted like, like we are going to make those subs, but it was a set piece and we want to make it in a set piece. And so I was watching for that specifically. The goal was in the 62nd minute and the subs were in the 66th minute. So they didn't have them ready, and it was a set piece, and then we're going to put them in. Like, it was several minutes after the goal that he was putting those guys in. So, like, I still don't know if that's even the wrong thing to do. Like, I think getting Danny out ASAP was probably the right thing to do, but like, was it going to matter if he did it in the 62nd minute or in the 66th minute? Because like we said, Gabrielsen was the one who didn't track Tuiloma. So it's not like putting in Valencia for Danny was going to fix that part of it, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The only reason I might have done it earlier was just to your point, like Danny seemed like a red card was inevitable at that point, especially with the way that the refs were calling the game. And then another criticism I saw a little bit of was there wasn't really like a tactical change, or I didn't think I saw a lot of tactical change after the subs came in. Like, you brought Ethan Finley in to do basically the same thing that Diego Fagundes was trying to do, and just hope that you got a better result. But I don't know. What did you think about that?
I didn't think the game plan needed to change because it was working. I thought we weren't executing once we got into the final third, but we were getting into the final third. And so, like, maybe there's a couple of little things you could have done, but Finley is just a way different player than Fagundes. He's way more direct and was stretching that line. I thought he did do some things that Diego wouldn't have done in that position and didn't do in that position. And so, like, I don't think you need to change a lot because we got 16 shots off against the team who was bunkered in defensively. And so I don't know. I don't quite buy that one. I think it's more of just like maybe timing things and like getting guys in and out. But even that one, I'm not sure about. Like, I don't have a super strong feeling about it. I think it's easy to look in hindsight and be like, oh, if you'd have made these changes a little sooner. But like 66 minutes is still like, I'd say on average, that's like slightly earlier than most second half subs come in.
Yeah, fairly. And I think compared to the criticism last year was like that he would just keep the starting 11 in so long, right? And just feel like this was not as valid as some of those other ones. Like this timing was earlier. Some of the other, like I feel like the 2021 things that people would talk about were like so much more direct and obvious, and this is just like Monday morning quarterbacking on the outcome.
I'm not saying like it's like maybe he was wrong, but like you said, it's not as clear cut as some of the stuff that happened last year.
For sure. So what do we think? How is this 1-0 loss different, if at all, from our vast experience? I meant to look this up to see exactly how many 1-0 losses we had last year, but it feels like a lot. Like, what should we take away from this maybe that's different from what we did last time around?
I think this one is different. So last year, there were a lot of games where it just seemed like we are hoping for an accident to lead to a goal to be an equalizer or the go-ahead goal. This looked like a good team. There was a clear tactical plan that was, for the most part, really well executed. And I think we found out the hard way last year that good teams on the road know how to stay in games and capitalize on moments when an opportunity is presented. Seattle is what we saw there. Seattle played a bunch of teenagers against us, played super defensively, hung on until they could get Rui Diaz in for a few minutes, and he's scored a worldie. And so, like, that's what great teams do. And so I think last night or on Saturday night, Austin did all of that. They like did what they needed to do to stay in this road game, threw everything they had at Portland, got some good chances, and just couldn't get it over the line, couldn't execute in those moments. So I think that this is one of the questions we had in preseason is where are goals going to come from? We don't have Raul Rui Diaz to score that banger in one of those moments. And so we need guys to take a quote from Josh Wolf, to be more ruthless. And
yes,
when Portland gives you half a chance on the road in the rain, in the cold in Portland, you have to take it and you have to finish some of those chances. Even if you get 3 or 4 good ones, you have to finish one of them. And that's the only part we didn't do. Aside from that, I thought they looked good. I thought it looked like a good team playing another good team away on the road.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we'll have another chance to learn about this team coming up this week, right? I mean, you cannot be more different than starting with Cincinnati and Miami and then going on to Portland and Seattle, given like the results over the last several years. I guess I can't remember who it was, but somebody was talking about like the last 6 Western Conference champions were Portland or Seattle.
Yeah,
that's right. So it's a pretty good pedigree from the clubs that we're playing this over these next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Do you want to jump into our Seattle preview now?
Yeah, let's do it. So historically, I think everybody knows Seattle's really good. This is my favorite stat. I think I mentioned this when we played them last year, but they were granted an expansion franchise in 2009, and since 2009, Seattle has never missed the playoffs. So they're really consistent. They won the MLS Cup in 2016 and 2019. Then they were runners-up in the MLS Cup in 2017 and 2020, so that's what, 4 out of 5 years they were in the final? And I guess Portland was the other 2, and they play, I don't remember why I thought Lumen Field was interesting, but they play at a football stadium, get a lot of people out there. And then one thing that I kind of forgotten, but this Drew Carey, I think for Seattle is probably like the first celebrity owner, or one of the first celebrity owners.
Yeah, he would have been one
guy.
of the early ones for sure.
And he kind of introduced the whole MLS band thing, although it's a front office supplied. I think it's called the Seattle Soundwave, I believe is what it's called. But it's
it's like kind of the lame drum line.
It's like a drum line thing, and not like a Murga, but at the time, and I remember that being like really different and creative and interesting for MLS. They even have that, so that was like an interesting part of their history.
So in 2021, Seattle finished in second place, but then lost in the first round of the playoffs to RSL in penalty kicks. Raul Rui Diaz led the team in scoring for the 4th straight year.
So Clint Dempsey was the leading scorer for Seattle the last time that Rui Diaz wasn't. And last year he had 19 goals.
He has not played this year, I don't believe. I don't think he's played in any of their league games or any of their CONCACAF Champions League games. So we'll probably be seeing Freddie Montero, or I think they've played one of the young kids that we saw last year as well. So I guess that's one ray of hope, is that we're not going to have to play against Raul Rui Diaz probably.
Yeah, he won't do that again for sure.
So this season they seem to be even more stacked than they have been in seasons past. We saw Brad Smith go out. He's in DC now, but they brought in Albert Rusnak. So the team that beat them last year, probably their best player, brought him in on a TAM deal. Jordan Morris is back and seems healthy and ready to go. And then the rest of the team, they pretty much have everyone else here.
And Freddie Montero was like, he came back during the season, right? Last year too, I think.
Yeah, he might have come back mid-season last year.
So he's kind of an addition, if not exactly. And he's like he's played well in CCL and in the for them he's got one of their 3 goals. But yeah, still their slowish start to this season. They lost to Nashville and RSL in their first 2 matches. Defeated LA Galaxy 3-2 last weekend. So I think they have 3 goals for, 4 goals against, and currently sit 11th in the West, despite being my first overall pick in the MLS fantasy team draft with Phil West.
Yeah, the first 2 league games, they didn't look great. And we think part of that could be because they're playing in CONCACAF Champions League, which could be another positive for Austin, that they're playing in Mexico at Club Leon on Thursday and then coming to Austin and playing on Sunday. So they're going to be traveling. They're up 3-0. It's a 2-legged tie. The first tie they played at home and won 3-0. So you could see like maybe they'll not play the full starting 11 against Leon in Mexico on Thursday to try to save some guys for the league game in Austin. But that seems really risky. Like, Mexican teams have beat MLS teams more than 3-0 several times
for sure
in Mexico. So I'm curious. I'll be watching that lineup when it drops for the CCL match. But either way, they're going to have some probably tired legs in Austin on Sunday when they come. But we've seen in the past that maybe it doesn't matter. They'll just
I was going to say
out a 15-year-old and still beat us.
Yeah, I know. I've given up on being excited about any possible Seattle like negative consequences before they play us. So I mean, it should be another good test. And I think if any team set up to be deep enough to deal with CONCACAF Champions League and MLS in the same week, it's probably Seattle, just because of the amount of talent that they have.
Yeah, so as far as Austin's approach to the Seattle game, I mean, I think they need to just like Ted Lasso it and be a goldfish on this one. Like, forget about Portland, come out with the same attitude that you played against Portland and just go at Seattle. Like, what do you have to lose? Like, Seattle's probably going to do, because of the situation they're in, and also just because of the way they kind of play sometimes, like they're probably going to maybe sit back a little deeper and hope to just steal one like they did last year whenever they came to Austin. So I think Austin should approach it the same way. Just play like you did against Miami and Cincinnati. Just play like a good team. Pretend, like, act like you're a good team, because I think they are. And so they'll still have to be careful with some of these really dangerous attacking players. This is going to be a really good midfield that they're playing against again, but they held their own on the road in the rain against Portland, so I think they can do the same against Seattle. Yeah,
this week, on social and stuff, they had, there was like the players having the barbecues, and there was all this real positive content, which is really easy to get into after you've had the best 2-game opening in the history of Major League Soccer. So it'll be interesting to see like how that holds up, and whether this sort of spirit of camaraderie and all this kind of stuff holds after a negative outcome, or if suddenly like they retreat a little bit. I mean, hopefully they won't. I feel like this is a test. This will be a test about whether it's a different team this year or not, for sure. It's how they respond, and how hopefully, last year we got off to a really good start, and then one loss compounded this like losing streak that was awful. That was the Andrew Wiebe was happy to point out last week on social media. So like, hopefully we take one loss as just one loss, and it doesn't turn into a bigger thing than that.
Yeah, so Austin, after this game, will go on the road to San Jose, come back home to play Minnesota, then back on the road to DC. So not the hardest of stretches here, but not necessarily easy either. But I think getting a good result at home against Seattle could like the good vibes hump that we're kind of sitting on top of. I think we could fall off on one side or the other depending on how the Seattle game goes. If Seattle comes in and demoralizes us, I think some of the good vibes and some of that camaraderie could swing the other way. But if we get a good result and even beat Seattle, I think it could like kind of solidify that, and that like this is just what this team is now.
Yeah, let's hope for that. Do you think we'll see any more changes? Do you think we'll see any more roster, any more lineup changes this week? Is this the week we see Johan Valencia? Like, tactically, is that the right move against Seattle?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough because, like I said, Danny looked good, but so I guess the like one criticism I could have of Danny is that there were several moments where we would give the ball away, counter press, we would all swarm the Portland players, and Danny would like crash into a guy or foul him. I think maybe in that same situation, Johan Valencia maybe wins a few more of those balls without fouling, or just gets him a little bit cleaner. I think the question is like, what does Johan do moving forward, and does it make up for what we're losing there? So I wouldn't be surprised either way. Danny's looked good enough that I wouldn't blame Wolf if he didn't want to take that spot away from him after how good he's looked. So I have no clue. I think the one that is up in the air is the center back spot. Like, do you think Gabrielsen keeps his spot, or do we see more rotation there?
I would think we see Gabrielsen again. Like, I think it would generally he was pretty good, and I think it would send a bad sign to have that kind of reaction to just like one moment.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Anything else about Seattle before we wrap it up?
Now let's wrap it up.
All right. We would like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Tell a friend. Tell the people sitting beside you at the game. If you hear someone talking about something nerdy at the game, or like pointing out tactics, or talking to the person beside him about who's a better six, then just say like, "Hey, have you ever listened to Moon Tower Soccer?" Let them know. We'd really appreciate it. We'd also encourage you, like we've said several times, the show is always going to be free, but if you have a couple of bucks, join the Patreon. We'd appreciate that as well. If you want to continue the conversation, come find us on Twitter at LViajero87 and jbentley_ATX, and then at Moon Tower Soccer on Instagram and Twitter. And then we'd encourage you to visit the Striker Texas website. Jeremiah, what can folks look out for over there?
Well, Chris Bills has started a new series, which I think Landon helped name. Well, I don't know. I guess he gave you choices, and he gave us choices, and you picked one. The Verde Q&A series, and the first article out is an interview with Davey Arnaud that is I think it's pretty insightful. Yeah,
there's like a lot of little tidbits of information of like things I've just like always been curious about that Davey answers, like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing when you see this. And so yeah, check that one out. I thought it was really good. Another one I thought was good was the who's the real capital of Texas soccer, and the writers from each of the Striker Texas cities make a pitch to say like why their city is the soccer capital of Texas. I thought that one was really good, so check that out too. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a new episode of Moon Tower Soccer. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around. Muchas gracias. Bye bye.